Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we are talking about this bad boy right here, the Fujifilm XT5. Like I said earlier, I've been using this camera for over a month now. I took it on several shoots here in Toronto. I went back to Toronto to visit some family members and was able to use it on a few shoots over there, including a photo shoot inside a studio. I am working on that video, so make sure to subscribe to see when that video comes out. But I think I've used it long enough to understand this camera. There are things that I like about this camera, and there are things that I don't like about this camera, and you'll be able to hear my thoughts on it, starting with the build quality. While I was traveling, the one thing that stuck out was the form factor. This is one of the reasons why I switched from my XH2 to the XT5. I stuffed my Peak Design backpack with a couple of cameras and lenses, and the XT5 took up the least amount of space. I felt like I could fit more into the backpack than normal, so that was a great sign to me. I was shooting with the XH2S and the XT5 interchangeably the other day, and the one thing I noticed whenever I switched back and forth from my XT5 and the XH2S was how clunky the XH2S felt after holding the XT5. The XH2S does feel more solid, it's bulkier, and it looks a bit more professional, but I find myself being a bit more comfortable with the smaller size camera. The only thing I do wish that the XT5 has is a deeper hand grip. I just wanted to extend out its grip a bit, just like the XS10 or the XS20. Now, I've owned the XT3 and the XT4 previously, and one thing I'll say is that the XT5 does take a dip in quality. The materials used in this feels kind of plasticky, whereas when I was holding the XT3, I just remember it being a little bit more solid. If you really admire the premium feeling build from the XT3, you may not like the build on this camera, the XT5. It does feel a little bit more plasticky. But for me personally, I am fine with the materials they use on this camera. When you start using it, you totally forget all about that. So if you're a fan of buttons and dials, you'll get 3 dials here on the XT5. One is to control the shutter speed, one is to control the ISO, and the third one is the exposure compensation dial. The dials are back in this camera, so if you guys were complaining about the lack of dials on the XH2S and the XH2, rest assured it's back on this camera, and I think it does add to the aesthetics of this camera, which I really do like. I really like the way this camera looks. It's like a really good looking camera. And I also have to note that I do like the way the buttons feel when I press them on the XT5 over the XH2 and the XH2S. It has a nice click to it. It doesn't feel flushed like the XH2 and the S. I also like the fact that the XT5's front and back wheel are pressable. This is something that they removed in the XH2 and the S. The reason why I like this is because before I got the XH2, I was shooting with the XT3 and the 4. I used those pressable function a lot. And because of muscle memory, I find it was a challenge to get over that hump initially when I was getting started diving into the XH2S. So it's nice to see that the dials here are pressable again. The EVF is not as nice as the one found on the XH2 and the S, but I'll live with it. It's not that bad. I still think it does a decent job, but that's something that I noticed when switching back and forth using my XH2S and the XT5. The 3-way tilt screen is back, folks. There are some people who likes this reintroduction into the XT5. I forgot how nice and clutch it was to use when you get down really low. It was handy in some situations for me, but for me, I'm really indifferent with this 3-way tilt screen. If it was a flip out screen, I'd probably say the same thing. I really don't care. And we also got the dual SD card slot on this camera. This camera also uses the new battery, the NPW235, and we gotta talk about the battery life on this camera. Holy crap, it's so good. While I was in Toronto shooting that full 8-hour studio, I took over 2,000 shots. It only used up about 3/4 of its battery, so I was amazed by the amount of juice this camera has. It definitely feels like you can shoot more on this camera than the XH2. And then there were the other shoots that I did after the studio shoots where I was probably taking shots in different locations for 3 hours, and I would come out with over 1,000 images, and it seems like it didn't do anything to the batteries. I really like the battery life on the XT5. Maybe the new processor made it more efficient, and maybe it's because the EVF is less quality of an EVF over XH2 and the S. That's why it's using less battery. It just becomes more efficient with its consumption and usage, and that's one thing that I really noticed. Another thing I noticed while I was shooting a full 8 hours in the studio was I did not get any hand fatigue. These are things that I noticed, and overall it made for a pleasant shooting experience. Some may say, the hand grip on this camera sucks, and I'll agree that it doesn't have that secure grip like the XH2. And again, I wish it was more with the XS10 or the XS20 grip, where it's just like deep. But saying that, the camera wasn't slipping out of my hands or anything, and I didn't fumble with it at all. So while I was using this camera walking around downtown for a couple hours, I thought it was fine on my hands. But then again, I don't have the biggest hands, so I find this form factor is just, it feels good for my hands. If you got big ass hands, the XH2 would be the better suited camera for you. And like I said, I was walking around the city for a couple hours looking for like interesting backdrops to shoot with this camera. It was so nice. It was very, very pleasant. It was small and nimble. It didn't draw any attention. Again, all of this made my shooting experience quite pleasant, and I liked it. So any chance that I get in making my shooting experience better, I will jump on it, like selling my XH2 and buying this camera right here. So while I had the camera in Toronto, I did not update to the latest firmware, which is 2.0. My experience using the AF was great. Like, I didn't have any issues where I was getting mad that the shots were like out of focus. Yes, there are some misfocused shots, but I've been getting more keepers, so the hit rate has improved to a point where I am not complaining about how I wish it was at Sony's level anymore. I think it's reliable even before the firmware update. It's a big step from the Fujifilm XS10 and the XT3 and XT4's autofocusing algorithm. This is a lot better. So again, I haven't been disappointed at all with the stuff that I'm shooting, and it's been great. But yeah, in this autofocusing test, you're going to see the AF from the previous firmware, which is 1.0, to its current one, which is 2.0 or 2.01 if you want to be technical. So you can see for yourself if it's any difference to you. And after updating to the firmware 2.0 with the XT5, it does feel a bit stickier and more responsive. More tests are needed though. I will touch on the autofocusing perhaps in a few months when I do a long-term update on the XT5. Let's move on to the image quality. And let's not forget the XT5 has the same sensor as the XH2. It has a 40 megapixel sensor. So you're going to get the same image quality from the XH2, and you're going to get the great Fujifilm's color science and its many Fujifilm film simulations, which I think makes them stand out from the rest of the camera brands. I like how stylized it is. They give you different looks from each film simulations. It doesn't feel like they threw stuff together and call it a picture profile, something I feel that other camera brands do. These film simulations are legit. To me, the raw files seems to have more latitude to push and pull information in post. It feels like there's more dynamic range inside, which is great. And the colors does look a bit richer than the previous gen models, and the images you are going to get just looks so good. However, don't upgrade your camera if you're solely looking for a boost in image quality. I don't think you need this camera if you're still rocking the XT3 and the XT4, because if I were to take a shot from the XT3 and the XS10, the XT5 and XT4 and just mix it all together, you're not going to notice that much of a difference between each cameras. I do, however, like the fact that this sensor is a 40 megapixel sensor. I like it for the fact that I'm able to recrop or reframe my shots and still have loads of megapixels left over and a ton of details in my shot when I do crop in. I do crop and recompose my image a fair bit when I'm shooting with a wider lens, and having the ability to crop in and still have detail is great. It really saves me from my fuck-ups or my ability to not get composition right the first time. And as far as video is concerned, I think the video I get from this camera is great. You got the F-Log2, a great video file to work with. You got all the codecs and the bitrate right here. Although this camera is marketed as a photography first camera, it's also a powerful video camera, and I'm just putting it out there. So this could end up being a good hybrid camera for anyone that's going to be doing a lot of photo and video work. Although it's the same 8K sensor like the XH2, you're only able to film it at 6.2K up to 30p on this camera. If you want to shoot 4K 60, it's with a 1.18 times crop, which is nothing. So there are cool video features in here for any of you guys that want to dabble in video work. Let's move on to the cons.
I just wanna have fun, turn around now.
Let's get into some cons that I have with this camera. The one thing that I don't like about this camera is the buffer. I got spoiled using the XH2 and the XH2S with its CF Express Type B memory cards, and these things will clear images so quick. It's like so freaking quick, and it's so good. And ever since I moved on to the XT5, this was the only thing that I wish the camera was really better at. You only notice this when you shoot at this certain mode. You shoot at burst, at continuous high, and shooting it at lossless compress. It craps out within a few seconds. I noticed this when I was doing the XT5's autofocusing test. And again, it doesn't have that high speed CF Express Type E cards to clear all these high resolution images, right? It just stutters and lags within a few seconds. It does improve, however, when you switch it to compress, but even still, it only extends the continuous bursts at 8 frames per second for like a few extra seconds. So nothing to write home about, but it's just a little bit better. So I don't think this camera would be great for high speed action work. So you would need to get the XH2S or the XH2 for that. I think those are better choices for high speed stuff. Another thing I don't like about the XT5 is the EVF. Again, I am spoiled by using the XH2 and the S's EVF. So when you're so accustomed to something and then you switch over to a lower tier camera, you start to notice these things and you start to miss these things. Unlike the XT3, the XT5 does not have a vertical hand grip made by Fujifilm anymore. So if you want a vertical hand grip as a separate accessory, you're going to need to buy the XH2 or the S to get access to that. The hand grip would have been nice on this camera, since I do wish that the hand grip would just protrude out a little like the XS20. It would have made it much more secure. And lastly, I want to talk about the workflow of this camera, especially the RAW files. Now, this has been an issue also with the XH2, and I didn't bring it up on the XH2 review because I thought it could be a Lightroom thing, but I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to point this out here. But the XT5's RAW files do not play nice with Adobe Lightroom. Every time I finish a shoot, I would import over 1,000 shots onto my catalog and try to code them. And I get hit with a 20 to 30 second lag every time. And once it's finished lagging, I'm able to go through my images again, but only to be hit with another lag for the same amount of time. And this usually happens like every 10 to 20 photos. So take a look at this. I have over 1,000 shots in my catalog. So can you imagine a 30-second lag for every 10 to 20 photos? It made my workflow very long, and it has been so frustrating, and I don't know what to do. So I'm not a camera scientist or a camera nerd or anything like that, but I don't think this is supposed to happen. I have more than capable machine to be able to handle this. I have a MacBook Pro M1 Max with 64 gigs of RAM, so there should be no reason why this is happening. This machine, the machine that I have, can handle like 8K video files like nothing. So I thought, since it's a high megapixel camera, it's slowing down my machine. But then I remember editing my GFX 100 RAW files on this laptop, and it didn't give me this much of a headache like the XT5 or the XH2 did. And I thought, since I shot lossless compressed, whenever it gets imported into Lightroom, it still needs to unpack the RAW files with its software. So then I switch over to lossless to see if that helps. And it doesn't. It still lags whether you're shooting on lossless compressed or just lossless. So people have been saying that Fuji RAW files aren't really optimized for Lightroom. So I don't know what the hell is going on, but if you guys have any solution to this problem, let me know. What I've been doing from the suggestion of one viewer is I've been culling my images in a fast RAW viewer, and it loads the XT5 images so quick without any lag and without any stuttering. So that way, whenever I go over my images, it's been quick and painless on my end. And once I get the images that I want, I will have to import the selects onto Lightroom and then work from there. And that seems to improve the speed of that workflow a little bit better. But in order to use this software, you do need to pay $30 for it. And $30 is nothing in the grand scheme of things. But seeing how I was able to use Lightroom smoothly with the GFX 100S RAW files and other RAW files from Sony and Panasonic, the fact that I have to pay to add another step onto this process, I think, is a little bit ridiculous. So I don't know what's going on here. For any of you guys that know more about this, do let me know how you work around this, because I find this so freaking annoying, man. Like, I would like to know what the heck is going on, because I'm getting so annoyed culling my images in Lightroom, and I've been told that Capture One isn't any better. You see, Fuji, every time you do something good, there's always something quirky that makes me wonder. So you better fix this and get in touch with Adobe and give them the secret sauce to unpack your X-Trans RAW files, man. Because I would hate it if, I don't know, would switch back to Sony. Because I'll do it, man. I'll freaking do it. And most people should be aware of this, but be prepared to spend some money buying storage, because this is what you're going to get into when you buy a high-res when you buy a high resolution camera. Oh no! Oh god. You're going to need more storage to store these photos. I swear I keep having to buy more memory cards and more hard drives to store and back these photos. The lossless compressed RAW files is around 40 to 47 megabytes per image, while the lossless RAW files are around 80 to 87 megabytes. And if you're someone that shoots at a high volume, such as like a wedding photographer, be prepared to buy a lot of storage. The last thing that I want to mention that is a con for me right now is I wish the micro HDMI was like a full-size HDMI. That would have been nice. The question I get often is whether you should upgrade from the XT3 or the XT4, and I say it depends. If it's strictly photography, probably not. If you're thinking of upgrading because you think your image quality could improve because of the 40 megapixel sensor, I would say no, don't upgrade, because the XT3 and the 4 can still get the job done. That 26 megapixel sensor is so freaking good. It's more than plenty. Again, you're still going to get a top-notch image quality from that sensor. Like, it's so freaking good. But if you want the better speed, better autofocus, a more reliable autofocus, and you want a better quality shooting experience, a better quality of life when it comes to shooting, then yeah, upgrade. But you don't really need to. When I had the XS10, I was still getting shots just fine, and it served me very well. So this has been my 1 month review of the Fujifilm XT5. So what are your thoughts on the XT5? Although there are some quirks about this camera, the pros do outweigh the cons, and I enjoy shooting with this camera a lot. Using it for this past month just cements and, you know, reaffirm? I think that's the right word. Reaffirm that I made the right choice in selling my Fujifilm X-H2 in order to get this camera, the XT5. I love using this camera just to walk around town with it. It's small, it's powerful, it's inconspicuous, it has the latest and greatest autofocusing tech inside, and the AF is way better than before. And the camera is just like a beautiful looking camera to look at. It's compact and it's great as a travel companion, and it really does everything that I want it to do. And if you're interested in the XT5, links are down in the description below. But again, what are your thoughts on this camera? Do you guys have this camera? What do you guys think? And if you find this video valuable or entertaining at all, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and subscribe to my channel, where I talk about photography and Fujifilm content on this channel. And like this video while you're at it, so that the YouTube algorithm pushes it to more people. And as always, my name is Tongue, and I'll see you in the next video. I love you.